Earbuds. There, we'll just do that. Okay. I swear I'm semi-professional, Chuck. Hang on. Okay, at least one earbud in. Now I can hear you.
I was going to say, can you hear me okay?
I can hear you now.
Okay, good.
Oh, we're live. Oh, it did allow me to fix it. It did. It popped up on the other screen. No wonder. There. See, now I can do that. And I can click save. Oh, wait. No, I can't click save. Okay, I can do this. There you go. Okay. Hey everyone, we're live. Guess what? Guess what? Let's see. Oh, I have to assign you. I'm going to assign you to Eric's spot. Boom. There you go.
Scary.
Yeah, now, why on earth ooh, look at that. Whoa. Now, why on earth can I only hear you out of my left ear?
Don't know. Haven't heard of that one before.
Very strange.
Just to be sure. Did you hear me scratching the mic?
I did, and it only came out of the left.
Okay, so I just want to make sure that it's doing what it should on my end.
Yeah. That is, in fact, you're only showing up. I'm only seeing the left channel. But if I do, here, if I do, you can hear that, right?
Yeah, I can hear that. Heard that.
And that's coming out of both.
I mean,
I don't know that you're doing anything wrong or different. It's just, I've never had that happen before. Why on earth would that?
it says stereo mode is enabled. To change this setting, refresh the web page. Is that you or me? I'm afraid if I refresh, I'll lose the connection.
Hey, Brian F. Thanks for joining us live. You get to see all the fun pre-show stuff. That's why we do this, is so that people can see all the fun. Well, that's fine. I'll just listen to you out of my left ear.
Okay.
I'll turn you up a little bit, but I don't know why that would Here, let me try something. I'm gonna turn my mixer off and on.
Can you hear me?
I can, out of my left ear.
Okay, tell you what. I mean, if we're not pressed for time, let me do what it says. Let me refresh the page. I don't know why it says stereo mode is enabled.
Okay.
That's what I have to do. So here we go. Reload the site.
Blippity blippity.
Okay. Now do you hear me in both ears?
I hear you in both ears.
For some reason, it said stereo mode was engaged. I have no idea why or how or what, but
How bizarre is that? Well, there you go.
that's a new one. Yeah, that's a new one.
Now I've got your volume turned up here, but you're a little soft.
Okay. Let's see if I can give you a little more gain. Those are maxed out to a point that I'm going to get distorted if I don't do something. Let me see if I can give it to you out of system preferences. Balance.
I bet you can hear the fans on my MacBook Pro going bonkers.
Okay, is that out? Is that any better, Mike?
Yeah, that's a little bit better.
Okay, I got to still have a little more. How's that? Test 1 2, test 1 2.
Yeah, it's fine. Hey Brian, how does Chuck sound to you? We'll have Chuck say something.
Oh, yes, that's a good idea. Sorry about that. Yes, by all means. Chuck, say something, you dummy. Testing 1 2 3 4. This is about the volume I would normally speak 7 years ago.
Brian's going to be about 20 seconds behind. And then how does that sound compared to my sound? He says, so glad to join live, but we're not getting the comments back from him.
I think I'm giving you everything I've got, Mike.
Brian says, sounds good. Thanks, Brian. Awesome. All right. So I don't have anything in particular planned today,
Oh,
Chuck.
okay, now
Just,
I've lost you.
what's that? You still there? Or did we lose you?
Oh, there you are.
Yeah.
Okay, sorry about that. That was weird. Okay.
Yeah. Okay. So we did lose you for a second. You were still live. You just weren't
Yeah.
hearing me.
Okay, so I didn't hear you. You hear me? You hear me now?
I hear you now.
Okay, all right.
Brian says
Then-
Chuck is a little quieter.
Well, I'm just kind of shy.
Well, we'll give this a go. We'll give
Sounds
this a
good.
go and see what happens. I'm seeing some spikes in the bandwidth statistics, so maybe we've got an issue here. On general, it looks pretty good though. We've got
Okay.
we're cruising on. So yeah, there are a couple spikes, but I think we're good.
Okay, I'll try to shout a little bit more. Maybe that'll help.
How you doing? Everything go well on the Mac show?
Yeah. Oh, yeah. It always does. It always does. We never know what exactly we're going to talk about, so that just makes it even easier.
there you go. And we don't really know what we're going to talk about today. I've got a couple things queued up. I've got some news stories queued up. I've got something else I wanted to talk to you about specifically. But other than that, yeah, I don't really have anything big planned for this episode. Thank you for subbing in, by the way.
Oh, my pleasure. My pleasure, absolutely.
Very cool, very awesome that you could be here. And let's see, we've had Jeff sub in. I think we've had Dave sub in. I'm trying to think recently. But yeah, it's great that you were available today, so that you could join us for the show. So I just gathered together a couple news stories. I don't know if there's anything in the news that you in particular would like to talk about. It doesn't really matter what it is. You don't even have to tell me ahead of time if there's something you want to talk about. We'll throw it to you for that.
Don't have anything right in mind at the moment, but
Okay.
you never know what might come up.
Well, let's see. I've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 stories. And we certainly don't have to cover all of them. And the first two could probably be combined. In fact, they probably should be combined, quite frankly. So we're good there. Let's see. Are you good on... oh, shoot. Once again, Mike forgot to start the recorder. Okay. This is being recorded, but that was not being recorded. God. I have to put a note, literally, like right in the top of my screen and say, Mike, start recorder. I used to put that in my notes every week, and I stopped, and I guess I just have to put it back there again.
Been there, done that.
But this recorder, my Zoom pod track over here on the left, this is the one that I rely upon for the start and stop time when I'm editing the audio. So I take note of the start time on its recording screen, not Ecamm's recording, or YouTube's, or what have you. So what do you think? You ready to get started?
Go for it. I'm good.
All right. Awesome. You seem a bit subdued. I need to get you out of that subdued mood.
Well, I'll come alive when the camera comes on. How's that?
Sounds good. All right. So we are starting at 1 minute and 20 seconds per Mike's failed recording start time. Okay. Here we go. In 3, 2, 1. It's for Mac Guys Only, episode number 413. Wait, let me start that again. There we go. I'm going to start on me. Why not? 3, 2, 1. It's for Mac Guys Only, episode number 413 for July 14th, 2023. A Mac voice among us. Hey everyone, welcome back to For Mac Guys Only, the show for the Mac community, where we share our thoughts and opinions on current Mac news and events. And joining me to share thoughts on all things Mac is the host of MacVoices, Chuck Joyner. Hey Chuck, thanks for coming on today.
Hey Mike, how are you? Great to be here, and thanks so much for having me.
Oh man, I am so excited to have you here. I will get to that in just a second. I did want to mention to folks like Brian who are joining us in the chat room, if you are joining us in the chat room and it gets busy in there, I'm going to be keeping an eye on the chat room too. So if you have any questions or comments as we move along, just preface it with a Q and a colon, and we'll try to address it here on the show. But as I said, I am excited to have you on, Chuck. And this episode in particular, honestly, not just because it's a rare chance I get to have the host of MacVoices on for Mac is Only without a full panel of other guests for our reaction time episodes, but also because we are a mere week away from Macstock, which is an event that you play no small part in each year with your Road to Macstock series. Which is actually something I would like to chat with you about in just a bit. But I wanted to mention, you are also Macstock's kickoff presenter on Saturday. Now, I know that you are more angling for a motivational type angle with your talk, but since you're here, would you care to share any more about your talk without giving anything away, or is it best left a secret at this point?
No, it's not. Well, maybe pardon me, maybe a combination, Mike. First of all, I didn't know I was going to be a kickoff speaker, so that's terrific. I like that. I mean, I frankly, when I found that out, I went back and sort of redid a bit of the presentation to take it to a little bit higher level because I feel like I would like to try to set the tone or introduce the idea that this year's topic of learn and get people sort of in the mood to think about how to learn, why they should learn. Um, I've got the benefit of talking to all the speakers pre-Macstock through the road to Macstock.
Yeah.
And so I get a sense of where they're going to go and what angles they're going to attack it from. And so therefore it gives me an advantage to be able to say, okay, kind of here's my take on what is going to happen over the weekend. So I want to try to do that with part of the presentation and then maybe put in a few of my own actionable items and ideas at the end so that people at least start to get that kind of a takeaway, because I feel like that's what they're going to get from everyone. Everyone that I've talked to is going to be able to deliver some kind of takeaway, whether it's going to apply to everyone in the audience or not. I have no idea, but they all seem to be coming at things, some a little more general, some very specific. Just overall, I'm anxious to hear from every single presenter. Probably this year, more than any other year that I remember. I'm excited about every single one, and I think, frankly, part of that is the topic of learn. That because I'm kind of a passionate learner, almost to distraction at times. That there's so many opportunities right now in the world of learning for things that you and I enjoy, especially the tech. That it's a shame that more people maybe don't see it that way and aren't taking advantage of it. And so I'm hoping to get people to think about that a little more and maybe make that a bigger part of their lives.
Yeah, that's great, and I think you nailed it. The topic of Learn this year is going to be a special one, and I have the privilege of being able to, in some cases, meet the presenters for Macstock for the first time by way of the road to Macstock, or just learn a little bit more about them. And every year, even if it's a presenter who's been there 3, 4, 5, 7 times in some cases, I learned something new about them thanks to the road to Macstock. So if anyone is listening to this and they're planning to take in the talks at Macstock, whether virtually through the digital pass after the fact or live or even in person, boy, you really got to watch the road to Macstock and learn a little bit about these speakers yourself.
Yeah, I would encourage anyone to go, because some, like you said, some people you may already know, some people are going to be brand new. We have a couple brand new speakers this year that have never been on stage at Macstock, which is a tribute to your selection process. Trying to keep that mix of some familiar faces with some new faces, but these are just fascinating people that come from all kind of angles at things, and yet we all have that technology enthusiasm and that Apple technology enthusiasm. So I did want to ask you though one question.
Yeah, sure.
When you assign me as the first speaker, so sometimes that's viewed as a keynote position and it's a position of honor. And then if you switch over maybe to the music festivals, it's like, yeah, they put all the low-hanging acts, way down at the bottom and build up to the end. So I'm either really honored or maybe a little distressed. I'm not sure which. So I'm going to take it as the first and then go from there.
Well, you should absolutely take it as the first. You should take it as an honor. It was a difficult decision on my part, and I know this isn't a Macstock podcast. This is for Mac guys only. But it was a difficult process trying to figure out when and where to put every talk. And I based it a lot on the topic and how topics mesh together. I always try to do that. If there are two presenters whose topics work well together, I try to put them together so that that mindset that people are in can be carried through from one to the other. But in a case like yours and in a case like Allison's, who is the kickoff presenter for Sunday, they felt like they just naturally belonged in that let's get people ready for the weekend spot in each case. So in your case, Saturday, with that more, as you described it yourself, a more motivational type angle. And I just thought that was going to be the perfect lead in for the weekend. And then Allison's talk too on learning by teaching. That actually ties into some of the comments I had already compiled together for my very brief, and I'm going to emphasize very brief introductory comments at Macstock, but her talk kind of ties into that as well. And I don't know, I only used the term keynote presenter once ever, and that was in 2018. And it certainly was not undeserved, but I felt like it did a bit of a disservice to everybody else speaking. So I don't like to use that term, but to assuage your fears, Chuck, it is essentially it's a keynote for each day. It's a talk to set the mood for each day and get people ready for a day of learning, in both your case and in Ellison's case.
Well, to make clear, I was not fishing, and honestly, I'm honored to be the opening act for Rachel Schmitz.
Oh, absolutely, yeah.
So
And yeah,
I couldn't be followed by anyone better.
another great new presenter at Macstock this year is Rachel, and the schedule is just filled with folks new to Macstock stage, as you pointed out. And that was deliberate. I did want to bring a lot of new voices into Macstock this year, but I also wanted to save room for well, I don't want to use the term favorites, but the people that have become somewhat synonymous with Macstock throughout the years. Dave Ginsburg and Mike Schmitz and you and Allison. There are others certainly who have contributed a lot, including Dave Hamilton and folks who can't be there this year, like Brett Terpstra. But yeah, it's just a great mix of voices that will be familiar to Macstock attendees and voices that will be new.
Can't wait.
Yeah,
Can't wait.
I can't either. It's a week away at the time we record this. We're recording this on Friday the 14th, and the Macstock kicks off Saturday, July 22nd. So we're 1 week away. I can't believe it. I feel like I have stuff ready, and yet I feel like nothing's ready. That's where my mind is every year when Macstock gets closer and closer and closer. So I have this pent up nervous energy that's going to just all get released the Macstock weekend, and then come Monday, nothing. There'll be nothing. I have nothing on my schedule other than the regular client work. But now I'm doing that and Macstock and other stuff, and yeah, so it just gets, it comes to a head. My wife calls it Macstock brain. Macstock brain. Every year I get that. So, and it starts up about 4 weeks prior. So.
Oh, is that all? Gee.
Well, that's when it comes to a head. Let's put it that way. Oh,
okay.
Macstock brain comes to a head. Yeah, there you go.
Yeah. I didn't even hear that the first time you said it. Now I can't unhear it.
Now you can't unhear it. Well, let's get on with For Mac Guys Only. I do have some news stories I would like to touch on. A couple of these we don't have to spend a whole lot of time on, but They definitely affect me, and I think they might affect you too, Chuck. I'm not entirely certain on that. But the first one is a service that I really love, and I have a lifetime membership to their plan, and that's Plex. Plex just in the last couple of weeks has laid off 20% of its workforce. That's alarming, when you hear something like that. Now, that amounted to 37 people who were cut. Those layoffs did affect every department at the company. And it's primarily their ad business. Their ad business, they say, was significantly impacted by that downturn in global advertising markets, which is affecting a lot of businesses worldwide. And with these layoffs, they're planning to restructure under four main product areas, and they say a few shared services. Is Plex a service that you use, Chuck?
Uh, Mike, it depends on how you mean that. I
Yeah.
have a Plex. I have a Plex server running here in the house,
Mm-hmm.
and I love it. I Well, that's another discussion. So let's just leave it at that. I do have a Plex. I do not utilize the Plex Pass or any of their other services. And so when I saw this, my initial reaction was, I'm a little worried about them because they aren't generating any revenue from me because I'm
Mm.
running my own server.
Mm-hmm.
And I've never bought into the Plex Pass,
Yeah.
because I've often wondered why, and this is the last time I looked at it, so this may not be quite fair, but I was always a little surprised they didn't try to integrate a little more with all of the streaming services, because that's their big competition in my mind. The media server is great, but I'm just starting to wonder that outside of our geeky little community here, how many people really have media servers running in their homes? And so, trying to monetize that can be a challenge.
Yeah, it can be. I do have the Plex media server running on my Mac over here to my right. It's been running there for years and years and years. The Plex Pass does give you access to some of the streaming content that they've started branching out into, their own content that they're licensing and putting out there. You do have the ability to add the streaming services that you subscribe to otherwise, your Amazon Primes and Hulus and things like that, and have those shows show up in your menus, and then click on them, and then it bounces you over to those services for watching. So there are things like that, but I'll be honest, like you, I do subscribe to it, but I also feel like I'm not really contributing to the bottom line because I bought into their lifetime pass. So, that was a one-time purchase and I get all these amazing benefits, but I'm not continually supporting their efforts with that. It was a one-time thing. What I primarily use it for now is I purchased a small HD home run. I don't know. Are you familiar with those? It's
Yes.
basically a small box with a couple antennas built into it, uh, or receivers, I should say, built into it. You hook your antenna to it, and it will integrate itself into Plex so that you can get a full channel listing of all the broadcast TV in your area. You get that full channel listing within Plex, and you can select and record shows. And having that HD home run has effectively allowed me to get rid of Hulu Live. I don't have any need for YouTube Live, or what do they call it? YouTube TV, Hulu Live, any live streaming service. I don't really have a need for it because the primary thing I used the Hulu Live for was the occasional show that wasn't otherwise streaming elsewhere. So things, like some sporting events, or maybe a holiday special, or the fireworks on New Year's Eve, or something like that was streaming live. I could watch it on Channel 7 or, PBS or whatever. Well, now I don't need that because I have the HD home run, which pulls in all those channels through the air for free with this little $110 box that is sitting on my network and integrates with Plex. And then Plex itself, I've got the channel set up on my Roku box, so I can just go in there and browse the channel selections. And you know what? Every once in a while, I do go in there and I tune into some old sitcom from the 70s or 80s or something like that. An episode of Family Ties that, oh, I remember that episode, and you tune into it because it happens to be broadcast on some, crazy channel 37 or something like that out there in the ethosphere. But yeah, I don't really watch or use the other services that the Plex Pass provides me. But the recording is a feature of Plex Pass, and that is a reason that I have it and subscribe to it.
Okay, so educate me a little bit. Does that give me? I hear what you're saying about the home run and the ability to record what you're getting there, but Plex Pass does not give me the ability to record other shows off of any of the streaming networks. Is that a correct statement?
Correct. Right.
Right.
It gives
I'd
you.
be shocked if it did.
Yeah, right. Yeah, so would Hulu.
Yeah. Yeah. So
Like,
and-
yeah, we don't think so. And by Hulu, I mean Disney, and Disney does not take legal matters lightly. But yes, so the Plex Pass gives you the ability to record content off that box, that HD home run box. That's what it gives you. And that's the feature of it I use. It's nice that the other features are there, but I don't use them. But I do use the recording feature and then just occasionally. And the nice thing about that is that it records directly to the storage drive of my Mac. So, if it's something that I wanted to record and keep, there's none of this weird, how do I record this off of YouTube or Hulu or whatever? And then what format does that recording come in? And what kind of weird hacky software do I have to run to do it? No, I just record it and it saves right to my drive and I can replay it anytime I want to. So I do like that feature of it.
I guess my only, and I'm not being snarky about this, I'm pretty serious, that I can think of maybe one or two things that are on broadcast TV that I would care even a little bit about. But, that ship is, at least for me, is pretty much sailed.
Yeah, like I said, for me, it's the occasional sporting event, but honestly, most of that comes through Apple TV, or it comes through Hulu, or it comes through, one of those other services. And if I miss a game, I don't need to watch the re-air of it. I mean, if it's on, I turn it on. When the MLS games are on Apple TV, I'll tune one in. But I don't need to go back and see it after I already know the score or anything. That's not something that I do. And the only one that's really annoying, the most annoying to me, I don't watch NFL, but I'll occasionally tune in a baseball game, is the MLB app. I'm glad I didn't actually pay for that. I got it free through T-Mobile. If I had paid for that, I would be mad. Not one Cubs game that I want to watch has been available since I got that stupid service. And I'm sorry, but it's a stupid service. If I can't watch the games of the teams that I mark as my favorites, then what's the point? Everything is always blacked out.
The whole sports thing right now seems to be in flux, because I've heard the same argument about the NFL pass.
Mm-hmm. Same
just,
thing.
If I really can't believe that they don't put something that's high priced but within reach of everyone, that if you really, take my money, but then I want to be able to see every NFL game, not just every NFL game or MLB game, except for the ones in my home market.
Right.
I mean, I understand the protecting the broadcasters and protecting the networks and protecting the station owners and all that. But at some point, I do get a little worried that, the NFL is one. I'm not a baseball fan, so I really shouldn't even touch on that. But I've heard people talk, and it sounds similar to the NFL. But one night we have one game on Thursday nights on Amazon. Then I think, if I'm right, Monday night is on ESPN, and then Sunday night is, I think I've got it right, is NBC. And that's as far as I can remember. And then everything else is kind of scattered all over the place. And so
That's crazy.
well, yeah, I mean, if you're enough of a football fan, I guess you're going to subscribe to all the services necessary. And maybe there's an argument to say that, okay, that's what you got to do is just change the channels and keep track of it. But it in a world where still a lot of that stuff is on broadcast TV, I I assume that they're going to continue to draw partnerships with the streaming services to get that streaming, because you and I both know a whole lot of cord cutters that have no access to broadcast other than if they have put up, if they have a home run or put up a digital antenna or something.
Yeah.
They don't want to go that direction. I'm in a situation here where it's a little more rural than you are. And so I have an ABC station, I have a CBS station I can get with ease. NBC, there's a significant hill between me and the NBC station, and short of going out and putting up an outdoor digital antenna, I can't get anything. So how, is it important enough for me to subscribe to my local cable to be able to get the NBC affiliate and then go with all the other junk that they throw in with it that I'm paying for? You have to look at it and do a little bit of cost benefit analysis.
I'm probably speaking out of my ear here, but I suspect the HD Home Run has some signal boosting technology built into it, because we've never been able to get more than a handful. We don't even have a digital antenna. What we have is in our attic. It's not on the roof even. It's in I just stuffed it up in the attic. I took no care in putting it up there at all. It's like, just if the arm could unfold, I would unfold the arm. If it couldn't unfold because of the braces for the roof, whatever. I just slammed it up there. It's like kind of balanced between all the beams of the roof and all that stuff. Very little care at all. And the best that we could get in the past, when I just hooked that antenna up to our TV, was maybe a dozen channels, something like that. I swear there must be 50 channels that are coming in through that HD Home Run. It's crazy. And they're digital. They're digital channels. So I'm getting these in. It's not a digital, it's an analog antenna. So I don't know. I'm not an antenna expert, but it gets in, all the, what is it, like 7.2, 7.3, 7.4, all those different digital channels that are coming in. I'm just getting a ton of channels with it. Sure, not all of them are valuable, but there's at least all the local broadcast stuff is there. So if there's something on that is not otherwise streaming and I want to record it or watch it later, I can do so. And that's pretty cool. Now, I'm old school when it comes to sports, because, look, if I wanted to watch the Cubs, I would just turn on WGN, Channel 9, which became Superstation WGN, and you just watch the Cubs, 12:10, 1:20, whatever, you could watch the game. Brian says he has the same issue with the Diamondbacks in his area. And, what? It seems to me they're just encouraging people to sign up for VPN services and say, no, I'm not in Chicago. I'm in Seattle, so just so you can watch a Cubs game. And that's crazy. If it comes to the point where MLB says, oh, well, that free offer you got from T-Mobile is over, we want to charge you $179 or whatever it is for the year, I'm like, yep, see you later, because there's absolutely nothing on it I care about otherwise. So, and yet Apple somehow gets it right. Apple, with their MLS agreement, has every single game. There are no blackouts. If I want to watch a Fire game, great, I can watch the Fire game. If I want to watch Austin or Seattle or Portland or, whatever, I can watch them. They're all there. How is it that Apple can do it, but nobody else can? How is it that Apple can do it and the MLB themselves can't? That's bonkers.
Well, okay, so I'll push back on that just a little bit, and please don't.
That's why I have you on.
Because, yeah, well, okay. So no emails, because I'm so afraid of insulting someone. But in the United States, soccer is not quite the religion that baseball and football are. Our version of football.
I don't know. They're filling up 40, 50,000 person stadiums, Chuck.
Oh, it's in the process of changing. There's no question. But
Yeah.
the history. I mean, go back 10 years, go back 15 years.
Well, MLS started in 96.
Okay, so
Yeah.
it doesn't have the history, and so therefore, I don't think it has the perceived value. And again, it is changing rapidly. And, and this Apple's deal, I think, just makes it available to more people in a fashion.
Worldwide.
Yeah. And certainly, the kids, I mean, soccer teams are now, high school soccer teams are almost as big a deal as football teams and baseball teams. So I feel like soccer is a little bit, not infancy is the wrong word, but it's in its adolescence. Let's put it that way. And,
Well, the only one you're insulting, Chuck, is me, so don't worry about it.
okay, well, then I'm not too worried about it. Yeah, so I'm with you. I mean, as you were talking, I'm thinking back to when the iTunes store started, and one of Steve Jobs' big arguments was that people would prefer to pay instead of having to jump through all the hoops. If you made it easy and took away the friction, people would pay.
Yep.
And yet, the sports networks for NFL and MLB seem intent on increasing the friction.
Yeah, absolutely. The other, the music industry and the motion picture and television industry came along kicking and screaming, but they eventually figured it out. And it seems like sports is one of the last holdouts. I agree with you on that. Yeah.
So, it's beyond our ability to control, and it comes down to how much of an effort do you want to make, how much do you want to get over that friction, and how much do you want to pay to do it.
Yeah. Yep, absolutely. Well, in another bit of sad news, and this one might actually be closer to your heart. I don't know. It's a service I use. Evernote has laid off their entire U.S. staff. Now, as a subscriber to Evernote, not as ardent a user as I used to be, but as a subscriber, I see that and say, am I going to be renewing next year or not? Well, apparently the layoff was effective July 5th. Staffers, now this was kind of nice. Staffers typically receive 16 weeks of salary, which is good. I don't know if that's great, but it's good. At least they weren't left with nothing. 1 year of health insurance, that does have some value these days, and a prorated performance bonus along with assistance for those working on visas. And then they say going forward, a dedicated and growing team based in Europe will continue to assume ownership of the Evernote product. So yeah, I do subscribe to it. I don't use it as heavily as I used to. I do use a combination of Apple Notes and Evernote, but I suspect you're also an Evernote user, or were anyway. How might this affect you?
I was at one time. I migrated away from Evernote quite a while ago, and there was, honestly, I don't remember exactly why. There was something going on at Evernote that it just left a bad taste in my mouth, and I felt like I wasn't getting, and not corporately, just for my use case.
Right.
And so I stopped using it. And frankly, I bounced around from a number of different solutions after that, which should have been an indication of how good Evernote was to me, but I sort of missed the message. And then Notes came along, and now Apple's Notes, and that's where all my note-taking has landed. Well, that's not quite true. See, note-taking to me is a really interesting category because there's so many different note-taking apps out there, and they all have different takes on how to take notes. Apple's Notes is for me about 90% of the way there. There are a couple things that I'll use in another application somewhere, but it does everything I need. When I saw this, I thought, okay, the message of the tech press screams, Evernote's laying off everybody.
Right.
If you read it, it doesn't sound like Evernote's necessarily going away. It's just going to be moving somewhere else. And so, I have some hope for all the Evernote faithful, including you, because I can think of one or two services I use that I don't know where they're headquartered. One I just found out was headquartered in Europe. It's like, whoa, okay. Our friends at MacPaw are located in the Ukraine. Now they have people all over the world, but they're headquartered in Ukraine. Does it make any difference where somebody's headquartered in today's world? No, not really.
I agree with you. It really doesn't. So consolidating resources does make sense from a business perspective. It's a shame that they had to lay off so many people to do so. But yeah, I did take heart in the fact that they were going to, consolidate their efforts to one location, and that ownership of the product was going to continue. There was an interesting comment on Ars Technica, however, in the article that I was reading about this. They wrote, many people today, especially younger people, may have never heard of Evernote. That was the quote from Ars Technica. And the reason that stuck with me a little bit is because even when Evernote was at its height, I found that many small business owners hadn't heard of it. They didn't know what it was. I used it all the time for things like snapping a picture of a business card and automatically sucking in that content and throwing it into my contacts. I thought that was an amazing feature. Their ability to, read a product label and store that information in a note that's searchable was kind of groundbreaking at the time that came out. Now it's, with Apple Notes especially, it's just par for the course. It's there, it comes free with all of our Macs. But that was a groundbreaking type feature. And yet here are all these small business owners that could have taken advantage of it, but they had no idea what it was or how it worked or why they should pay for it, for goodness sakes. They have these other ways of doing things. Why should or could they use Evernote? So they were kind of, in my mind, the small business owners that I encountered on a daily basis. I thought they were probably that core audience who could benefit the most from it. Now, it's interesting because I was working with another client the other day, and I was talking to them about iCloud and how they can synchronize their notes and reminders and things like that. And we turned on note synchronization, and I showed her how notes now synchronize from her phone, where she was taking notes, to her new Mac that we were setting up for her. And she's like, oh, that's nice. But at best, there was a half-hearted grocery list in her notes. And then the other thing that was in her notes were passwords. Now, I see this all the time. I see passwords kept in people's notes. I see passwords kept in people's contact lists. That is bonkers. People are always adding a new contact with the name of the source, and then within the contact, they're putting the username and password. I see this all the time. It's a quick, easy way for them to remember and find passwords, but oh my gosh, and they're using Notes for that, which is open and generally unencrypted unless you turn on the encrypt. You can encrypt a note in Apple Notes, but look, the average user is not doing that. So I don't know, maybe note taking just, for the majority of population that could benefit from something like Evernote or even Apple Notes for that matter, they're just not using it.
Well, I mean, how many times on every show that we've ever listened to, been on, or whatever, do we have to tell people, please protect your passwords?
Right.
You only need to do just a little bit of password management. Invest in a password manager so that you can do the same thing. It's just a dedicated notebook, if you will, that is much more secure, is encrypted. Yeah, it's going to be just a little more inconvenient to log into that password manager, but the benefits are many. And yet, yeah, I still see stickies sticking to monitors, and I just cringe and try not to preach, but.
And of course, the pages or Word document on their desktop. I see that all the time. And it's very difficult to get someone to change their ways when that's how they've always kept their password. But like you said, without being preachy, let's see if we can come up with a better way to store these things for you that's more secure, so that someone who might happen to gain access to your desktop doesn't also gain access to your entire digital life.
And it's a sad thing, but it's true about so many things, that people don't take the right kind of precautions. They don't put smoke detectors up. They don't put CO2 detectors up. They pay for insurance and then complain about the fact that, well, I got nothing for it. be glad you didn't get anything for it, you know, because that you didn't have the car accident, you didn't have, you know, the hurricane hit your house. But yeah, until you've had one of those experiences, and then all of a sudden, going forward, you're going to pay a lot more attention to things. So I don't wish that on anyone, but it seems to be the only thing that really gets through to some people.
Does that include people who have a whole home smoke detector system, and one of the smoke detectors goes bonkers, and you can't get it to stop, and they knock it off the ceiling and then don't replace it? Does that include that list?
Well, it depends on whether you're speaking from personal experience, Mike, or not.
Oh no, no, not
Oh, okay,
no,
okay.
absolutely not. I'm certainly not speaking.
Okay. Um, you know, yeah, listen, I know there have been times that I wanted to do that because back in the days, now we have a lot better options, but back in the days when you were changing your smoke detector batteries every year, or at least you were supposed to be, I don't know what it is, but those darn things have a sense that 2 a.m. in the morning is the time that they want to start chirping at you.
It's always 2 a.m.
It's always 2 a.m.
Yep.
And it's always the one that, you know, is a place where you have to move furniture and get the ladder to get up to. So you know, but
It's the one room
So
with
that-
the
I mean,
vaulted ceiling or the 12-foot ceiling, you know, the entranceway. Yeah, absolutely.
yeah.
Okay,
So
well,
you
it's
just-
one out of what is it, 20 we have in the house? It's so I have to replace it. Okay, yes, it was
Yeah.
me. I have to
Okay, well-
replace it.
Aren't you sorry you brought it up now?
Let's see. Brian says this conversation reminds me a bit of the continuum of convenience versus security, especially for a basic to average user, not as savvy to password managers. Yeah, I think that's pretty spot on. A spot on observation there.
Absolutely. Well, just think about turning on your Mac now. Well, I shouldn't say that. Depending on how you have your Mac set up, you can set your Mac up so that it just pops up and your desktop is there and everything is accessible to someone. Or you can set it up so that you have to type in a password or use Face ID or Touch ID or whatever. And just, you know, how long is your password going to be there? You know, do you want it to be just 5 or 6 characters, or do you want it to be 40 or 50? I mean, all those questions you have to factor into what kind of security you're comfortable with. I know I have a longer password on my laptops because they leave my house, and on my phone because it leaves my house. The desktops maybe not quite as much,
Right.
because they don't leave my house. So
They don't
you know,
leave. Yep.
to Brian's point, you know, the continuum. Where on the continuum does the exposure fall for how you live your life and what you do with your devices?
Yeah. Yep. Yep. That's a great point. Gosh darn, there was something I was going to say and I can't remember it, so we're going to move on. So perhaps in a bit of news that's closer to my heart than Evernote or Plex, though I use them both, Firefox 1.16, the future version, the next version of Firefox that's coming out, is going to drop support for macOS 10.14, 10.13, and 10.12. Now, this does not mean that this is going to be the end of safe browsing for those platforms, because all users who are on 10.12, 10.13, and 10.14 are going to be automatically migrated to the ESR, or the extended support release of version 1.15, so that they will continue to get important updates. And I think this is the value of open source software and apps like Firefox, that they want to ensure that those users who can't move forward are still protected. And so they create these extended service release versions of their apps that commercial products usually don't do. And it's rare to get those kind of updates, but at least those users are going to get migrated automatically to this ESR release, and they're going to continue to get any important security patches that come out. They may not get new features, but when they are ready to move to 10.15 or later, they'll be able to then migrate to version 1.16 or whatever is current at the time and get those latest features when they're ready. So I thought that was great news, and it's important to know if you are on 10.14 or older that, and you are using Firefox, because Safari is no longer getting security updates at that point. You are going to be migrated to 115 ESR, and you'll be okay for a while.
I don't even know what to say to this, just because, yes, I agree with you. It's a great thing. But I find it just really frustrating that we still have people that are actively running those old operating systems with all the potential security vulnerabilities that they have. And let's be clear, if you aren't putting that on the internet, then okay, it's not a big deal. Of course, if you're not on the internet, you don't need Firefox. So, but yeah, max out everything you can get, and then if your machine you've taken it as far as you can, then you have to make a decision: is it time to move to something newer and better, or are you comfortable doing what you're doing and knowing what the exposures are? And unfortunately, I don't think people really appreciate that. They hear all about the security breaches, and they hear about Apple releasing the rapid. I can't think of what the phrase is. The thing we saw go live.
Rapid response. Yeah.
Thank you. Rapid response. Yeah. So and they say, oh yeah, okay, but that doesn't affect me. I mean, I think we all, to some degree, tend to stick our heads in the sand over some of these things because it becomes tiresome just every time you open your Mac to have to update software or update apps or whatever. I mean, I don't know about you, but man, the developers do an awful lot of iOS updates.
Yes, they do. They're sending every time I pull down to refresh. There must be 20 to 30 plus updates waiting. Never any detail about what the update includes, but an update nonetheless.
They've gotten better at that, Mike. If you go in and tap the little information button, some of them will just do the classic Apple thing of software enhancements and bug fixes, but a lot of them have started to become a lot more transparent. So I would encourage anyone to at least experiment with that and see if you wonder what's going on.
Well, let's see here. Here's I'm little sidebar here. First app that comes up, no names. We're frequently updating the app in order to give you the best experience. Turn on auto updates to ensure you always have the latest version. Miscellaneous bug fixes, minor bug fixes. We've made some improvements, including analytics and accessibility updates. Okay, so a little bit more there. We update our app all the time in order to make your blip, blip, blip experience better. We polished a few things, fixed bugs, and made some performance improvements.
Yeah.
So I'm going through the list, and just about every single one of these doesn't say anything more than what amounts to bug fixes and performance improvements. Not that I need, war and peace here, but if there's a bug fix, I'd like to know if it addresses perhaps one of the bugs that I've had with the apps. That would be nice to know. Now, there are some who do give a little bit more information. To be fair, Slack gives some pretty decent information about what they fixed in this update. But then you get we've been hard at work making app name better for you. This includes bug fixes. And, so,
which
yeah.
Which bugs have you squashed? Yeah, I know. But I'm thinking of, maybe to be fair, I'm thinking of apps that get a major new update. A major new feature update.
Yeah.
That I see announced, and it's like, oh yeah, okay, that's interesting. Listen, when I have 50 apps to update, I don't go through and look at each one of them. There's no question about it.
Update all. Boom.
Yeah,
Done.
Yeah. But if I have something that is mission critical, I will go in. I mean, well, I don't mind saying one that for me, I'm using my phone as my camera for this. And so when Camo issues an update, I want to know what's in the update.
Yep, absolutely. Absolutely. I did want to piggyback off what you were saying a moment ago. it's interesting you mention the users who've been on older platforms, whether it's older Mac OS or hardware or what have you, and perhaps not feeling that urgency to update because it doesn't affect them. And the reason I say that's interesting because just this past week, I was working with a client who called me up and was having some issues with their iMac. And I worked with them last in 2019. Their iMac is a 2009 iMac. I last worked with them in 2019, and we brought them up to the latest version of macOS that their Mac could support. We upgraded their memory to a whopping 8 gigabytes, which was the max that it could support at that time, I believe, or the max that they wanted to invest into it. And, it's someone who doesn't necessarily have the budget to get a full-blown brand new Mac every 3, 4, 5 years. But they also knew that 2009 was pushing it and that they were concerned about security, and they do hear about these things in the news, and they did want to know what they could do. And quite frankly, the answer was nothing. Short of open core legacy patcher and hacking it and getting it to run a more current version of macOS, which does work, mind you. I've installed it successfully. I've installed Ventura successfully on a 2010 iMac. And quite frankly, it worked better than it ever did. It really ran fantastic, but it's not something I recommend to anybody but the odd hacker who wants to just play around. It's not something I think anybody should do unless they just want to play around with it. So I'm not going to recommend this to a client. So what could they do? All right, well, we have the new Mac Mini. We've got the new iMac. Here's a couple great options. Well, those were out of their budget. So we took a look at what OWC was selling in their used Mac department. And they had a 2015 iMac, $269. 16 gig of memory, a terabyte, not an SSD. It didn't have an SSD. It had the, what does Apple call it, where they blend the SSD and the hard drive?
The Fusion.
I never had a Fusion drive, so I always forget the name of it. The Fusion drive. It had a terabyte Fusion drive and 16 gig of memory, and I think it was with the memory upgrade $279. It was like a whopping $10 to go from 8 gig to 16 gig of memory in it. And it had an Intel Core i5, 3.3 gigahertz Intel Core i5. Now that's a pretty great little computer. It can't run the latest Mac OS, but it can run something a heck of a lot newer than what she had, and it fit within her budget. And so that's what she bought. She bought that from OWC. They shipped it to her. We transferred her information from the 2009 to the 2015, ready to go. But now, interestingly, she ran Brave as her browser on that 2009. Reasonably up to date, but she uses Brave as her browser. She also uses DuckDuckGo as her browser. She sometimes uses Safari and sometimes uses Firefox. But we could make sure that Brave was up to date, that she doesn't use Chrome. She doesn't like Chrome, so we didn't update that. We didn't put it on there. We put the DuckDuckGo browser on there, and we made sure that Firefox was up to date. And so now she is, for her general day-to-day purpose, even though Mac OS is not running the latest, she's pretty secure for day-to-day usage of that computer. And
so, pardon me, go ahead.
Oh, no, I was just going to say, I felt good about helping her migrate from that to the 2015. And then when she's ready to do that next step, when she can budget the next step and go to a newer Mac that can run the latest version of the operating system, I'll be happy to migrate her to that as well. But this was a huge step up for her, not only in performance, but it improved her security footprint as well.
So 2 points on that story, and I love the story because it illustrates that you don't have to get a new Mac. You just need to get a newer Mac. So you can take advantage of some of those discounts. And of course, Apple refurbished products are a fantastic deal. They usually don't go quite that far back, but when you're talking about somebody like OWC who has a stellar reputation, then that's a terrific option. And you're right, she definitely is a lot more secure than she was. I do find it a little ironic, and I'm not picking on your client either, but I find it a little ironic that she runs Brave and uses DuckDuckGo, but she was running a 2009 machine.
Right.
It's like,
And I believe they were relatively up to date. You know, Chrome and Firefox and other browsers, they're Brave is Chromium based. I think Chrome dropped support for that machine probably 2-3 years ago.
right.
But yeah, she was running the latest Firefox for sure. So
So she was. We're back to Brian's risk continuum.
yeah,
She's aware enough of tracking and security that she was using Brave and DuckDuckGo, but she was not looking at the hardware side of it, or maybe she was and just, yeah, to be fair, couldn't afford it or couldn't find a way around it. And you found her a great way around it for her, to at least pull her a little farther up in time and improve the security a little bit. So
yeah, absolutely. Okay, along those lines, this was exciting to me. Mozilla Thunderbird Supernova got released this week. This is something we have been waiting for as Thunderbird users for a long time. Supernova is version 115 of the Thunderbird email client. As I said, this is a release that longtime Thunderbird users and everyone who's in need of an awesome mail client, by the way, have been waiting for a very, very long time. On top of the new modern interface supporting a 3-column card view, on top of the new dynamic unified toolbar, on top of the new calendar design and keyboard accessible app menu, on top of sortable folder modes, an improved address book, and better accessibility, the thing that's most exciting to, well, maybe it's just exciting to tech nerds like me, but on top of all that, the team behind Thunderbird have modernized the software. They threw out years of code that was piled upon code. This was an open source project, by the way, Thunderbird. Years and years of code just kind of, slapped together by all these developers. They threw all that out. They reworked everything to make Thunderbird lighter, easier to maintain, and much more extensible. And yet, the thing that I like about this is that it still feels familiar. It's cleaner, it's faster, but it's familiar. And that's what I really like about projects like this. Even things like LibreOffice and Firefox and other big open source projects, they try to maintain that familiarity while at the same time improving their product and making it feel like it belongs on a modern operating system like Ventura. So yes, Supernova was released for macOS, for Linux, for Windows, and you know what? I have put it on 2 of my 3 Macs, and I am really enjoying it. I'm digging it. I think it's a fantastic improvement. The interface is great. If you use it, I don't use dark mode, but if you use dark mode finally looks like it belongs on the Mac. It didn't always look like it belonged before, but dark mode looks great. And, best of all, it's open source, it's open standards. And for those of us who maybe don't care for card view, because it's definitely not my favorite. It's one of my least favorite features of Apple Mail. I don't like that card view. That classic table view still remains. Now, the important thing to know is that if you are a Thunderbird user and you are running what was current before this, which was 102.13, you are not going to be automatically updated from 102 to 115 yet. But if you would like to check out Thunderbird 115 Supernova, which is now the current official release of Thunderbird, you can download the latest version of it direct from thunderbird.net and, as a Mac user, drag that app into the applications folder and you're ready to go. No huge migration process. It just picks up where you left off with the previous version and you're good to go. Now, I was nervous about such a dramatic overhaul to my all-time favorite mail client. But like I said, I gave it a go on 2 of my 3 primary Macs, and I'm a happy camper. So if you would like to give it a go, my recommendation is to ensure that you've got a good backup of your current Thunderbird profile, just in case you need to roll back, and try it yourself. So there you go. Thunderbird 115 Supernova. We've been waiting for it for a long time. It's finally here.
Mike, I'm a little embarrassed. This got me. Frankly, I didn't even know Thunderbird was still a thing. I remember using it a long time ago.
Yeah.
Can't remember exactly why I stopped, to be honest with you. But just, we were talking, I was looking this up, and it's like, looks interesting. So, thank you. Yeah, you just gave me a little homework.
Yeah, Thunderbird is great. I'm going to wait just a second here. I'm going to take just a brief pause because it looks like we're have a little bandwidth issue. And short of rebooting my router, which is not a great thing to do in the middle of a live stream. Okay, here we go. Here we go. We're all right.
Not if we can avoid it.
Brian says video is choppy. Stop and goes. Not sure if it's my side or not. No, it's my side.
No, actually, it was us. We were choppy, and the video was fine.
Yeah. I'm going to tell him that we were choppy. The video was fine. Oops. Helps if I spell it right. Especially to someone in education. Okay. There we go. Left him a message. Yeah, so sorry about that, Brian. I was noticing that we had a little bandwidth issue here for a second, and we're stabilized again. Whoop. Yeah, Chuck, Thunderbird is fantastic. I've been using it for years. It is, it came out of that original Mozilla suite, and then they broke out Firefox and Thunderbird. And I just think it's a fantastic email client. It is super powerful. But if you don't need all that power, it can work as simply as Apple Mail does too. So I've been using it for, I guess it'd be nearly 20 years now. And just absolutely love it. And you're right, it was in danger for a while. There was some danger to the Thunderbird project for a while, but they figured all that out. Without going into details of what happened and all that stuff, they figured it all out. It's essentially its own project now. It's got its own team working toward improving it, and they're just doing a fantastic job of it. And yeah, I'm happy to see it survive, quite frankly, because it's a great product. Now, if you're familiar with it, Postbox is actually based on the Thunderbird code. It's a fork of Thunderbird, and Postbox developers actually left, as I understand it, I don't mean to speak out of turn here, but they left the Thunderbird project to start Postbox. And then there are other Thunderbird forks as well, which I'm not very familiar with, so I don't want to name them off the top of my head. But there are other projects as well, and they're all based on that same solid code base of Thunderbird.
Yeah, it looks modern. It looks good. And there's some things out there that, Gmail doesn't look great natively. I mean, there's nothing wrong with it, and it's very functional, and I still use it under the right circumstances in the web browser. But trying to get something that is a little more modern and has that look, and I'm gonna definitely play with this. I like this.
And so one, it works great with Gmail. That is, my primary service, whether it's through Google Workspace or just regular Gmail accounts, it works fantastically with that. One of the things I love about Thunderbird is that it uses that open inbox format. So it's very easy to port your messages from one platform to another. I've ported my Thunderbird profile from more computers than I can name, and I never have to worry about it because I know it's in this open format. Every folder, if you will, or label in Gmail nomenclature, every folder or label is its own file. Unlike the monolithic Outlook where, you look at it funny and you lose everything. So, I love it for that aspect of it. To be fair, Apple Mail is the same way. There's some weirdness with the file format with Apple Mail, but it still works. You can still do it. And I love it. It's actually very easy to read your messages in any email client that uses this format. You can just open up that file in something like BBEdit and you can read all your messages, which is great. So even if the app itself dies, your chance of losing something, even if a file that represents a folder and the messages within that folder gets corrupted, there's still an opportunity to recover stuff, unlike proprietary binary formats. So it's important that being open source, they're going to do this, but it's important that they stick to the standard. And it's nice that commercial products like Apple Mail stick to it too, because it really does help protect the user's data.
Like I said, homework.
Yeah. Oh, if you had seen Thunderbird a week ago, you would have said, yeah, that doesn't look modern at all. This Supernova interface is what a lot of folks have been waiting for. So, yeah, I'd definitely check it out. I have one more story. How are you doing on time, Chuck?
I'm good.
Okay,
I'm
good. I have one more fun news story. This is great. Myst. Do you remember Myst, Chuck?
I do.
Yeah. Myst was released for the Atari 2600. Yes, the Atari VCS. This is called a demake, not a remake, but a demake for what I hope are obvious reasons, but an unofficial port of Myst, that early 90s Mac classic, has been at least partially ported to the Atari 2600. I just think this is amazingly awesome. Now, this is a hobby project of a gentleman by the name of Vince Weaver. He's not a professional developer, but he is an associate professor of computer engineering in Maine, I believe it is. And he says he started the project as a bit of a joke, as you can imagine. A bit of a joke. Let's port Myst to the Atari 2600. But he says he soon got carried away. And keeping in mind that the Atari VCS only has a resolution of 160 by 192 pixels and 128 bytes of RAM, you can imagine that graphical disparity between the original and his demake. And in fact, the disparity is even greater when you learn that there aren't plans to port the entire game because there are just too many limitations involved. But there are plans to get enough puzzles into the mix to actually make it playable. So, if you would like to give Myst for the 2600 a try, or maybe you would just like to read up on some of the more technical challenges of porting a game like Myst to the 2600, you can download it from Mr. Weaver's site for playing in an emulator. Or for the more technically minded, you can flash it to a cartridge and play it on a genuine Atari 2600 if you want to. A link will be in the show notes. And if, by the way, if Mr. Weaver's project, if his alternative take on Myst sounds familiar, I'm going to bring this back to Apple, because he originally released a demake of Myst for the Apple II, and that one is completely playable. So there you go, Chuck. If you'd like to relive your Myst playing days on an Atari VCS, you now can.
I got nothing. I watch people play Myst. I never played Myst. I've just never been a gamer. But I know that Myst holds a very honored place in a lot of people's game. If you're a gamer, it's one of those things that everybody tried out at some point. I mean, I distinctly remember the box, and just how gorgeous it was.
Yes. Yes, I would
So
be surprised if I don't have a copy of it around this room somewhere. But yeah, Myst. Oh, you know what? I think I do. I think I can't get it because of my headphones, but I think it's right there in the corner. I think I have a copy of it right there. But yeah, Myst is one of those games released in the early '90s. I can't remember the exact year, but it took full advantage of the CD-ROM. It pushed that poor little silver disc to its limits and was just an amazing immersive experience. You think about immersive experiences now when you look at things like Apple's new headset and whatnot, but Myst, you consider we played it on a CRT, probably if you were lucky, a 17-inch CRT, but probably not that lucky. So probably what, 14-inch, something like that,
at 640 by
maybe.
480 resolution.
Yeah, yeah. And then CDs. Well, I guess being a data CD, you could make it whatever resolution you wanted, but they certainly weren't going to push it beyond what computers were capable of at that time. But man, you had, what was it, 640 megabytes on a CD, and they
Yeah,
were
something like
just
that.
they were just pushing that poor little plastic disc. Yeah,
And when that came out, that was like, oh my God, this is phenomenal. This, like you said, it's pushing things to the edge
yeah.
of what we're capable of doing. And now it just feels borderline quaint. But and that's taking nothing away from it. So again, no emails, folks. But yeah, it's kind of amazing just how far we've come.
I still have an affinity for Doom, Castle Wolfenstein 3D. These early first-person shooter type games. I did play them extensively, and quite frankly, when the later versions of them came out, Quakes and even a lot of first-person shooters to this day are still based on that same rudimentary idea that we had when Doom was created and heck, Castle Wolfenstein was created. It's the same concept. I hesitate to say the same code, but I would not be surprised if there's some of it in there somewhere. But especially when Quake came out, that engine has just evolved throughout the years to allow people to play the games that they can play now. But what I'm getting at is, quite frankly, I don't enjoy the current games. I don't I don't like playing them. They're way too complicated. Doom, you run, you jump, you fire. And you didn't even have to aim. You just go in a room and you start boom, 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 and you take out those crazy aliens, right? Or I should say monsters, all the crazy monsters, or in Castle Wolfenstein 3D, all the crazy robotic Nazis. You just took them all out, but you didn't have to aim, you didn't have to do anything special. You just mashed on that fire button, you took them all out. And there was something viscerally enjoyable about that. And now there's so much complexity to these games out of necessity. Again, no letters. I'm not trying to insult anybody who enjoys these games. I just don't enjoy them because I like that, that Pac-Man like mentality of let's just eat all those dots and ghosts. Let's just go in that room and shoot us some Martians, and once you had to start aiming, I said, I'm out. And I went back to the 2D platform games because those are really my favorite. My heart is with 2D platform games going back to early 80s, Those are the games I always enjoy the most. And these days, sometimes a 2D platformer doesn't mean the same as what I think it means. But yeah, that's still the type of game that and racing games. Those are the games I enjoy the most.
I've loved to listen to gamers talk about their enthusiasm for their favorite game, whether it's what you're talking about or the most current 3D VR game, because I just have never it just never punched my button.
Yeah.
I've put on the VR headsets and they're fun, and it's depending on what we're talking about, the graphics are okay to good.
Mm-hmm.
I can't say I've ever seen a great game. It'll be interesting to see what comes out with the Vision Pro once we get there. If if Apple lets it go in that direction or if the developers take it there. But I love the enthusiasm of gamers. It's just not my thing.
I love having Brian in the chat room because he wrote, back in the day, games didn't have to explain so many directions, didn't have to onboard you. It was much more intuitive. For better or worse, you didn't have as much of a story or depth of characters. Yeah, that's exactly true. There was some story to Doom. There was definitely story to Castle Wolfenstein 3D, which came from a 2D platformer, by the way, Castle Wolfenstein. But, for anyone who recognizes this, one of my all-time favorite games is called Jet Set Willy, and it was released for the ZX Spectrum, or ZX Spectrum for our UK friends. And one of my all-time favorite 2D platformer games, so many variations of it, and when I want to kick back and relive my Spectrum game-playing days, more often than not, it's Jet Set Willy that I fire up. And you can't get any simpler than the rules for that game. So, yeah, just take a look. You'll find not only screenshots, but you'll find T-shirts made with the character, with Willy on it. You'll find all kinds of stuff out there with Jet Set Willy because there's a strong affinity for it and all the other games of that era amongst folks who are, well, let's be honest, my age.
There's nothing wrong with that.
Yeah.
There's not a thing wrong with that. We all. I think it's interesting to zoom out a little bit. I feel like it's almost a reflection of the sophistication that has occurred in media across the board. I mean, because I know I've gone back and looked at TV shows from when I was a kid, or let's say early adolescence, that I thought were phenomenal, and now you look at them, it's like, gee, that's kind of slow, and it's not as good as I remember, because now I'm into all the graphics we have in the Marvel movies and all the phenomenal effects of Star Trek and all of that, and so you gotta, and the storylines. I mean, go back and watch some of the early '60s police shows. I mean, they're just devastatingly simple compared to what we have now. So,
absolutely. Yeah. You hear this, well, I don't want to say complaint, but you hear this idea that you're describing very often applied to Star Wars and Empire Strikes Back and Return of the Jedi and the early Star Trek movies, Star Trek the Motion Picture. The pacing of them is so different than the prequel or sequel movies. And the love or lack thereof for the current movies versus the earlier movies usually is a generational one. That's very often. I mean, I don't actively dislike the later Star Wars movies. They're fun, but I love the original ones. I actually really enjoy the later Star Trek movies, the Kelvin timeline movies. I enjoy those. But, I like the early Star Trek movies just a little bit better. So, yeah.
I want to make sure I get this right. Hang on. Oh boy, why is nothing ever simple?
Okay, while you're looking that up, I got your chat. So,
Okay.
There's one more thing I wanted to cover if you are a willing participant.
Absolutely. Oh, good Lord, this is ridiculous. So I know this will be edited out, which I'm really glad. There we go. Okay, so coming back. Mike, do you ever listen to the Next Track podcast with Kirk McElhearn and Doug Adams?
I do not. I know of it, but no, I don't. I don't actively listen to it. No.
Okay, well, where I'm going with this is thinking about the pacing thing and all. One of their taglines is that they talk about how people listen to music today,
Mm.
and it sounds like, well, you know, you listen to music, you listen to music. It's amazing the number of angles they come at that from, but they regularly make the point that, you know, when a lot of us grew up, them included, you know, you bought one album a week or, you know, every 2 weeks. You digested that entire album. You played it over and over and over.
Oh
To the
my
point that
gosh, yes.
you know, you knew all the lyrics, you knew all the breaks, you knew everything. And now with Apple Music, as much as I love Apple Music, you just, okay, I listened to that album, now I'm on to the next thing. And I might get back to that album in a week, a month, a year, you know, but it's seldom that you sit down and just listen constantly over and over and over. Our attention spans have changed. Think about the tech media, and you know how you used to have in the magazines, you'd have a 2 or 3 page review of things. Now you're lucky if you get 3 paragraphs.
I know.
You know, so it's all a reflection of the speed and sophistication of society and all the things we have available to us. It's an embarrassment of riches. And yet some of us still yearn for some of the simpler things.
Simpler things, or in some ways more complex things. For example, you know, the idea of an album is that every piece of music on that album kind of relates to every other piece of music on that album, even if not directly. Now, this is coming from someone who's a fan of Genesis. So, you know, progressive rock is very famous for this. The concept album, Lamb Lies Down on Broadway, for example. But even later albums from Genesis, there's something that ties them together. You know, there's something that keeps that thread running from one track to the next. And you want to listen to the whole album. You want to listen to that track that maybe is relegated to a B-side, or maybe didn't even make the album. Now you go out and you find those 45s that have the B-sides on them, and you get those and you make them part of your collection, and you figure out where they belong in this album, you know, as you're listening to it, because you're making your own new mixtape of the album that includes these B-sides, which of course all these bands have done later. There's whole releases of the B-sides of Genesis music that, you know, I spent many hours collecting and assembling and putting together myself. Now they have their own. But yeah, that concept of an album is a more complex concept. It's much simpler to just tune into a track or part of a track if your attention span isn't long enough for the whole thing. But I enjoy putting on an album from whomever, a modern artist or a classic artist or classical artist, you know, and listening to it from start to finish. And you can, as I said, you can very often pick out, you know, when it's going to end, not because you know that album so well, but because of how that final song brings everything to a close. And we just don't have that. Albums are at best perhaps a collection of what could potentially be top 40 hits now. Potentially. And they know they're not going to be. But the idea is there that we're only going to put stuff on there that maybe could net us that big return.
Yeah. We could take this into a whole discussion of music, but we don't have time for that. So
We
maybe next
don't
time.
have time for that for sure. Oh man, we're going red again. I don't know what the deal is today. All right, we're smoothing out. Smoothing out. Come on. All right. I know we have a hard out here, so I'm going to move on to a final topic and see how willing of a participant you are, Mr. Joyner. Now,
Okay.
give me 1 second.
This is not a setup. Mike has not told me anything. Yeah, frozen.
Something something must be saturating my bandwidth. But you're a busy guy, Chuck. I mean, not only do you make many, many appearances on other shows each week, namely the Mac Show, but you are also on In Touch with iOS this week, just last night, in fact. You're on For Mac Guys Only today. And those are just the ones I know about. I'm sure I'm missing a few. I know you make a lot of appearances out there on other podcasts. And that by itself would be a lot for anyone. Then on top of that, you produce your own show or shows. Now, these are all under the auspices of the MacVoices umbrella, but you have your long-standing interview episodes. You have MacVoices Live. You have TV Plus Talk. Plus, you have your regular MacVoices briefings and MacVoices updates. You've got MacVoices After Dark. And I believe, I don't know if I've seen this in a while, but I believe there's a Star Trek podcast mixed in there somewhere too, isn't there?
There was. It's on extended hiatus.
There you go. There you go. But you've got that too. Now, I have to ask, in all seriousness, I mean this seriously, with a full-time job thrown into the mix too, how do you do it? I mean, not just physically, not just mentally, but technically too, because most, if not all, of these are released simultaneously as video and audio, if I'm not mistaken. And I was wondering if, with video on the rise, chiefly live streaming, you know, that's what we're attempting to do right now when my bandwidth doesn't go into the red. Would you be interested in sharing some, not all, but some of your secrets to staying on top of such a demanding schedule? And I mean that seriously. How do you do it? What is your physical process? And I suppose your mental process too, but your physical process for ensuring that you can stay on top of such stay on top of that release schedule that you have.
Well, thank you, Mike. I mean, I'd love to tell you, yeah, there are a dozen deep dark secrets, but it's just, first of all, I guess it's the enthusiasm for the topics and for the people that I talk to, because I never, first of all, I never have anybody on the show that I think I should have on the show. I have the people on that I want to talk to. Mm-hmm. And even that is a challenge, because I've got a list of potential guests, folks that I haven't talked to in a long time that I want to get back. And, you know, so scheduling wise, that's a bigger challenge. You know, here's a big surprise. I keep a spreadsheet and I kind of track, okay, so how am I going to, who's going to go where in the schedule and what's going to get published when. And I do not have a shortage of material. Now, one thing that definitely is a little bit of a look behind the curtain, and it's not a secret if anybody bothers to observe, but I do the MacVoices Live show on Tuesday nights, and then that usually gets cut up in 2 to 3 segments, depending on how long we actually go. Sort of back to our conversation we had a minute ago about attention spans and all. There are a couple podcasts out there that I pay attention to that are hours long, and I skip a lot of those because there's just too much. Unless they have a really great guest or topic, I just got to say, you know, sorry, I just can't. Even listening, and I've trained myself to listen to things at double speed and sometimes triple speed, but I just don't have the time to give to that. Mm-hmm. So I want to deliver things that are just a little more bite-sized, and try to make it, you know, so that's why you'll see if I do a MacVoices briefing, it might be 7 or 8 minutes, but you know, the other shows usually clock in around 20, 25 to 30, 35, because I feel like that's something that can be consumed. But again, I keep that list. The biggest thing is just matching my schedule up with the folks that I want to talk to, and so right. Inevitably we're scheduling a week or two ahead, and then I'm releasing maybe a week or two after that, because the streaming thing I really like, and it's fun to do it on YouTube because of the interaction, just like you're having here with Brian in the chat room. But I still am a bit of a post-production guy because I want to control the experience I want to control the editing. I want to make sure that a guest potentially doesn't embarrass themselves, although that hardly ever happens. It's more me that sometimes I might embarrass myself. So just the enthusiasm for it, and the fact that you have to keep constantly refining your process and looking at the new tools and things that are out there that can maybe make it a little easier for you, or heaven help me, let me do a little more, because there are things still that I want to do so badly that I just haven't gotten to. And some of those lists are a couple years long because you have ideas and it's like, okay, if I could just get a day or two to work on that, just never do. So, but I enjoy every single little bit of it, and I'm extremely lucky. I love what I do for a day job. I love all of this stuff. I have just a pretty good life along that line. I'm never bored. I'll tell you that.
I can relate to what you were saying about the live stream because this is new to me. Putting something out live like this is new to me. We would always record via Skype or some other, communication platform, and I would take that audio that we recorded and I would edit it down. And I still do that now. I'm going to edit this down for the actual audio version of For Mac Eyes Only. But, edit it down, clean it up, get rid of some of the ums and ahs, or if a guest pauses too long, or more likely I pause too long or whatnot. I clean that up for the audio version, for that official version of For Mac Eyes Only. But putting this live stream out there, I unlist it when it's done, and then I go through and I watch it and I add the chapter markers and I look to see, like you, if the guest or I say anything that maybe shouldn't have been put out there live, and I'll chop it out, which has happened once since August. There was a mention of a family member's name that I didn't think they wanted out there, so I took it out. But short of anything like that, which is rare because Eric and I have trained ourselves to not talk about personal family business during the live stream, it's been an interesting process. There aren't a heck of a lot of views of the live stream, even after the fact, even with the replay of it. Obviously, there's far more of the downloads of the show, and that's what I intend. But putting this out there raw like this is a kind of a nerve-wracking experience for me, who's always taking care to record and edit and sometimes re-record stuff if I didn't like what we said during the show, or more specifically what I said during the show, and re-record it. And we've caught ourselves recently, a listener has caught us misspeaking when we were talking about coding on the Mac. And had we recorded the way we used to, we probably would have caught those errors and then re-recorded it, or I would have re-recorded it later. But because of this new process, I completely missed it. And she called us on it, rightly so. And so it almost, doing the live stream almost fosters a greater opportunity for interaction, even though I do put restrictions on how people can interact. I don't open up comments on YouTube. I just don't. I feel like that's opening up a bucket of snakes. But having the chat available during the live stream is fun. It's fun and it's valuable to me, and it's heartening to know that Brian is out there listening to the show. So now you do this, you record, and I know sometimes you record with Zoom and sometimes you record with Ecamm. Are there any other apps that you use to do recording? I know Skype is your absolute favorite. I say jokingly. Yes. But I think you're primarily Zoom now these days, aren't you? Or do you do both?
Okay, so I do Zoom for one reason and one reason only, and that is the ability to add in almost as many panel members as I want for the live show. Now, Ecamm has made some changes, and here we go, back to that list of things to do. I need to do a little bit of testing with that. But we do Zoom because I can add, the other night we had, I think, 10 people, 10 panelists on the show, which
Yeah.
is a lot of fun to try to manage.
That's
And
a
then
lot.
stream it over. Yeah, and stream it over to YouTube. It doesn't give me the resolution I want, so I usually, after the recordings are done, I run them through Topaz Video AI to punch them, because otherwise they just, if you try to publish them into YouTube, they just look, unless you're just going to use the group shot. The group shot is not too bad, but if you're going to do the individual shots, they just look terrible. So run it through Topaz, and it gives it a little bit of a fuzzy, almost airbrushed feel, but it's a whole lot better. And then sharpen it back up a little bit in Final Cut, and you've got something that is definitely watchable. It's never going to be mistaken for, HD or 4K, but it's watchable. For one-on-ones, two-on-ones, I use Ecamm because it records up to 4K. So if I have 4 panels, like right now you and I are side by side, and you're doing it live in Ecamm, so I get 2 1080p screens, and then I can crop those, and I can do a group shot, I can do individual shots, and have it look really good. So those are the 2 things that I mainly use for recording. Now, of course, live physical shows like from the conferences, that's a whole different discussion. But as far as the recording tools here for online, yeah, those are the 2 things that I use. And if I could get better resolution out of Zoom, I might tend toward that a little bit, just because of the relative ease of use. But the power of Ecamm is just amazing with everything you can do. And eventually I would like to tap into some of that power and do a lot more of what you're doing, because you're obviously farther down the road streaming using Ecamm than I am.
A little bit. It's still new to me, and this is an Intel Mac that we're on right now. But with Apple Silicon, you can do up to 10 participants, interview participants, and you don't get that fan noise that we're getting right now with this. So I think eventually the machine I purchased for the Macstock live stream will be dual purposed for this, because that's an M2 Mac Mini, and that would certainly work a lot better than this one is. But even here it works great. And the neat thing about Apple Silicon with Ecamm Live is that you can do ISO recording too, so you can get those individual isolated video tracks up to a certain number. I don't know how many you can do. I think you can possibly do all of them. I'm not certain when it comes to 10 interview guests, but yeah, it's really amazing what you can do with this software. But can you do ISO recording with Zoom? How do you get the individual tracks with that? Or do you just upscale it and then crop it in Final Cut later?
No, I have Zoom set up so it'll give me 2 different recordings of the video. It'll give me the group shot, and then it'll give me the one that is the speaker view. Couldn't think of speaker view. It'll give me a speaker view. So while I'm talking, it will have zoomed in on me, and so then I take those 2 tracks, and for real quick back and forth between the panelists, I'll use the group view. But if someone gets into a longer explanation or discussion, then I'll cut over and use their close-up. So it has a little bit more of the kind of feel you're used to on TV news shows and that kind of thing. And that's what I'm looking for, because when somebody's making a point in a grid of 10 people, it can kind of get lost as opposed to zooming in on that person.
Yeah.
But you also lose something if you just go with the speaker view, because you miss the camaraderie that inevitably happens when you get, more than about 3 people. Then somebody tells a joke or cracks wise or something, and everybody laughs, and you find yourself kind of laughing along with it. So yeah. I'm very aware of the benefits of both camera angles or abilities. But I mean, listen, because I only get a 1280 by 720 for the group shot, so even scaling that up that'd be worse than the
kind of horrific.
Than the individuals. So.
Yeah. So are you a Final Cut user?
Yeah, very much.
Yeah.
very
So
much.
you take these individual tracks and you bring them into Final Cut. I imagine you have some sort of template or something ready to go that you drop them into a project file with all your lower thirds and the side panel that you pop out with the information. You have all this ready to go to help streamline the process. Is there anything else you do to streamline it, or do you just run it through Topaz, bring it into Final Cut, and you're ready to go?
So I'll take the audio track and run it through Alphonic
Oh,
to
okay.
to level it out a little bit and make it, because inevitably some guests are really hot, some guests are not. I keep getting in trouble for telling Brittany Smith that she's hot.
Yeah.
And it's like, no, Brittany, I was talking about your audio signal. But I'll do that, and then I don't all the lower thirds and everything. I have about 90% of those programmed into my Stream Deck. So,
Oh.
like if you pop on, and you're saying something, I can hit that button and drop the lower third in that way. So, and that involves a little bit of a little trip through Pastebot, and then the Stream Deck software. But at the end of the day, it works, and it saves a ton of time. So,
So the Stream Deck
that's
brings in a lower third in Final Cut?
okay. So here's the way you have to do it, because I'll create a lower third for you. Okay, the first time you're on the show, and I'll get all your information. Then I do a copy to that. That puts it on the clipboard. All right. Pastebot is the only one I've ever found that will take that and allow me to paste it back into Final Cut. So in Pastebot, I assign it a keyboard shortcut, a weird keyboard shortcut that I will never remember. Then I'll go over to the Stream Deck and program a button with that keyboard shortcut, which then will allow me to hit the button and paste it back into Final Cut. None of the other clipboard managers that I've ever found will allow that kind of thing, especially with a keyboard shortcut, to allow me to integrate it into the Stream Deck. So that way, I can I have all the regulars programmed. I have some of the more frequent guests programmed, so that I don't have to go back. Because the other thing you can do is in Pastebot, if I have a guest, the very first time I have a guest on, I will create a lower third for them, and then I'll store it in Pastebot. May not make it to the Stream Deck because they might not be back for a year. They might not be back ever. But it means that I don't have to go back and dig out all the, let's see, what was their Twitter handle? What was the website they prefer? All those things.
Oh, that's
I've got
great.
it archived right there. And with Pastebot, it's searchable, so that I can type in, Tim Cook. And if Tim was on the show 5 years ago, which he wasn't, unfortunately, but
That would be awesome.
Yeah, but it's right there, just waiting for me to go back and find it, and use it again, or at least use it as the basis to update.
Okay, so I think I understand. So you bring the lower third in, for those who use Final Cut, you bring that lower third into your video. It's essentially empty. It's there, maybe you have some placeholder text or something in there. It's essentially empty. You select that placeholder text and then drop in the information about your guest from Pastebot.
No,
I got that wrong.
Yeah, what comes in when I hit that button? I already know that I'm bringing in Jeff Gammett's information, because I have a Jeff Gammett button on my Stream Deck, which is a little terrifying now that I think about it that way. But I have a Ben Rathick button, so all of that stuff is already filled in. I mean, yes, when I created the original lower third, there was basically a placeholder that I start with, but I fill their information in, then do the copy, go over to Pastebot, assign it that keyboard shortcut, then go to Stream Deck and take that shortcut and put it into the Stream Deck and assign it to a button. And so now when I hit it, I have no more typing to do. That when I hit Jeff's information, it comes in his name, his Twitter handle, his URL, his podcast, all that information. Actually, it's a side panel, but call it what you will.
Okay, I was thinking traditional lower third with like the little graphic moving in and then the text over it, but you're talking about that side panel that slides in.
But the same thing applies to lower thirds, or just about any effect in Final Cut. Anything you can copy and ends up on the clipboard, you can do that with.
Wow, that's eye-opening. I may have to give that a try. Now, I don't have that same production schedule that you do, but I can certainly think of times where having that workflow would really save me a lot of time, notably when editing the Macstock videos for the Digital Pass. Now, this year's process is going to be a little bit different because of how we're doing things, but gosh, that could potentially save a heck of a lot of time.
Yeah,
That's really interesting.
I'd be happy to show it to you because once you it probably makes it it's probably a little easier to see rather than to talk about. Because once you see it, you'll get it completely, and it's like, oh yeah, why didn't I think of that? But the biggest challenge was finding a clipboard manager that would take something and continue to recognize it as a Final Cut element. I don't know what else to call it.
Yeah, yeah. That
So, but if you
I
can
think
do
that's
that,
what was throwing me
yeah,
because the
yeah,
paste, clipboard managers I have certainly would not do that. So
exactly,
I think that's
exactly.
why the whole process was not quite gelling. The neat thing about the Stream Deck is you can set up multiple pages. No matter how large your Stream Deck is, if you have the what is it, 6 or 15 or 32, you can set
Yeah,
up multiple pages and just have an entire page of nothing but these guest buttons,
yeah,
which is great.
and yeah, and does it take a little while to set up? Yeah, but if you're using them repetitively, and I have buttons for like Mac Voices After Dark, the intro to Mac Voices After Dark. So instead of having to go and import that or figure out where it is, I just hit that button and it's right there, then ready to work with.
So I don't want to spend too much time on that because I know we have kind of a hard out here. So I want to kind of wrap things up. But so you do your recording in Zoom, you do your recording in Ecamm, your editing is primarily in Final Cut. You do process the audio from it, which is nice because you can get that separate audio recording in Ecamm, and you can certainly get it in Zoom as well if you want to. I believe you can get a separate audio recording in Zoom. Process that to kind of level it out a bit. Use Final Cut's fantastic syncing feature to sync that audio to your tracks, edit it all down, publish it to YouTube. Now, do you publish it elsewhere too?
I published the video to YouTube, to Vimeo, and to Facebook natively.
Okay.
Because
Vimeo is a
that
great
way,
platform. Yeah.
oh yeah, yeah, and I intentionally put it on Facebook natively so that if you click, it starts to play right there. You don't get kicked out and have to wait for it. So
Okay.
it
Cool.
goes to those three places. Then audio goes to, let's see, SoundCloud. Yeah, audio goes to SoundCloud, and then there's a smaller version of the video file that gets uploaded and is available as a podcast. I mean, I don't make the big files available because it would melt your computer. You don't want
Yeah, yeah, exactly.
and then of course I publish the feeds through.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, the audio gets of course uploaded to Libsyn, which is what then delivers it to iTunes and to all the other podcatchers out there.
So Libsyn distributes it to SoundCloud and to all those services for you.
Libsyn doesn't send it to SoundCloud. I send it to SoundCloud directly because that was before
They get it
Libsyn
everywhere
supported.
else.
Yeah,
Yeah.
but everybody else gets, so it goes to Spotify, it goes to, well, Stitcher's about to shut down, but it'll go to Amazon Music. There's a whole host of places that it picks up from Libsyn.
And I imagine the audio, are you doing a straight export of audio from your Final Cut video, or do you also do a little editing and processing of that before you make it official?
No, I just do a straight export. I
Yeah,
just do a straight
that's cool.
export.
And I bet after all these years, you have this process pretty down where adding a show doesn't really add a whole heck of a lot to your weekly grind, if you want to describe it
No,
that way.
yeah, it's again, it's more just I've got it down, but I'm always trying to refine it. I'm always trying to find a way to make it just a little bit better. So, or a little bit faster, a little bit easier, a little bit better. So like right now, I'm experimenting because Auphonic just started integrating large language models. And so when
Mm-hmm.
I upload to Auphonic, it will give me chapter markers, it will give me a transcript, it'll give me a write-up. A lot of times that has to be edited, but it's giving me some options I didn't have before. So I'm experimenting with that and trying to figure out the workflow there. So it's, it's, again, it's fun to play with all the tech and see what it can do for you.
Well, I think it's fun too to hear, or let me put it this way, to take a little peek behind the curtain of the wizard that makes MacVoices possible every week.
Yeah.
Because that, if nothing else, my thinking in asking you these questions is maybe someone is out there who has the idea to start a video podcast or to start a live stream, and they're nervous about getting started. They're nervous about the amount of work that might be involved. But I think listening to you now, there's a little bit of comfort in knowing that, here all these years in, you are still refining the process, but even still, you've got it down to a point where it's not a burden. It's actually, dare I say, enjoyable for you to put out any given episode that you've recorded. So, yeah, I think that's great. And knowing too that you record one week and release another week, or sometimes maybe even 2 or 3 weeks later, adds some comfort too, depending on what type of show or what type of podcast they want to do, that there isn't necessarily an urgency to getting it out. That you can take your time, you can edit it, you can get it to where, without overthinking it, get it to the point where you feel it's ready to go and push it out there, short of it being a new show or something like that, where there is a timeliness to it.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, I don't like to let things languish too long. And the live shows, unfortunately, because they end up being 3 segments, that they can get delayed a little bit. On the other hand, I also know as a podcast listener that a lot of times I don't listen to something that comes out for, this week for another 2 or 3 weeks. It
Awesome.
just, so it's there. I mean, and I always tell people, please listen to every single one if you want, or skip the ones that cover something that you really don't care about, because it's impossible to keep up with everything that all the great shows. I mean, how many people are going to be on stage at Macstock that produce really great content? There's no way you can keep up with it all. So you have to pick and choose the personalities you like, the topics you like, the things that are relevant to you.
Yep, absolutely. Well, thank you, Chuck. I appreciate you sharing a little of that with us. I know you need to get going. So I'm going to wrap things up. Thank you, Chuck. I think that's going to do it for this episode of For Mac Guys Only. I hope everyone enjoyed it. Remember, I do love to get your letters. So if you have any comments about the show, a tip to share, a software or hardware problem with your Mac, or maybe you'd like to share some of your own tips for the podcast that you're producing, be sure to leave your favorites in the comments of this week's show notes found at formacguysonly.com, or drop me a line, mike@formacguysonly.com. And do be sure to subscribe to the show's YouTube channel at youtube.com/FMEOTV and click that little notification bell so you can find out when we're going live. You can join the chat room like Brian, and you can catch all the behind the scenes stuff that doesn't make the final cut of the show. Chuck, what is the best way for people to get a hold of you?
MacVoices.com is where you're going to find pretty much everything, or links to everything. And I'm on all the socials as @ChuckJoyner and or @MacVoices. Usually @ChuckJoyner is the best one to find.
Fantastic. Thanks so much for listening, everyone. Thanks for, let me do that again. See, edit point. Thanks so much for listening, everyone. Thanks to Chuck for joining me this episode. Stay subscribed, and we'll talk to you next time.